This episode is about forgiveness, which is particularly difficult in the world of the boys, where some crazy, heinous stuff goes down. Whew! Can Homelander forgive his Vought family? Can Hughie forgive A-Train? Can the team forgive Butcher? Can Starlight and Firecracker be forgiven for their sins? Kimiko and Frenchie are also both looking for forgiveness from those that they hurt back when they were both bad people. They're so alike. They have so much in common, including that the two people they hurt can't forgive them. So they're really going to have to try and forgive themselves. And that's what I think this episode is ultimately about. Specifically, it's more than just forgiveness overall. It's that what really matters is forgiving yourself, freeing yourself. That's what Hughie says. Hughie says that he doesn't forgive A-Train for A-Train's sake, but for himself, so that doesn't eat away at him and destroy him. I mean, look at Homelander in this now, and another instantly classic meme. Like, look what he had to go through and do, but doesn't he feel oh so much better coming out the other side? I mean, obviously Homelander's very wrong, but still very relatable. I think there is humanity to Homelander. I think he's a very complex character. And that's why so many people gravitate towards him, despite the horrible things that he does. Kimiko, though, she seems to not be feeling better. You know, she gets rid of her speech books that she had gotten with the hope that, her therapist said, maybe if you confront your past, you'll be able to talk again, because she feels it's psychosomatic. But so far, Kimiko's still not there, despite having confronted her past. Maybe it's because she's not forgiving herself. Maybe that's the issue. Maybe she's not there yet. Unfortunately, Kimiko and Frenchie both have weak storylines this season, although at least Kimiko's gives some action to the show and for her character. She got blown in half this week. I wish they could have afforded to show her kind of starting to come back together. But I mean, hey, to even do it at all is impressive on a Prime Video show, right? This show is very expensive, and we're like, where's it all going? Because there's not too many fight sequences on it, actually. But I guess that must have been one of the big spends. By the way, Karen Fukuhara is looking amazing this season, just gorgeous. Do the boys have a glam squad? She looks so good. Let's hope in season 5 that Kimiko and Frenchie get better storylines like they deserve, because they're great characters. Hughie, after a slow start, his storyline is really starting to pick up. Oh, and just wait until you see next week's episode. Just you wait. All right, they're not going to pay Simon Pegg to just lie there in the bed. Let me just say that. Oh my goodness, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. This week, as I said, we're talking about forgiveness. So let's go through these scenarios in order. And don't worry, we're also going to talk about Sage's lobotomy. And I'm very impressed that so many of you guessed it just from seeing the bloody metal rod on the table last week. I was like, wow, they got it. They got it from just that one quick shot. All right, Homelander. Of course, we're going to start with Homelander. Last week, I said that Homelander rarely actually has fights. And sure enough, this week, instead of going evil Superman and smashing the lab and just killing everyone inside it, he gets his Batman villain on, right? He reminded me so much of the Joker in this sequence. That laugh. And I think he gave a little more depth into what the Joker does even. Very good writing here. I think the writers on The Boys could do a good job with DC characters, particularly Batman. But anyway, although Matt Reeves is doing a great job. But this, to me, is as disturbing and darkly fascinating as the big reveal at the end of the Return of the Joker. I think it's one of those instantly iconic scenes. So yes, he went all psychological on everyone, although I guess they started it, right? Messing with him first. But who did start it? Homelander is convinced that they started it, that their inhumanity robbed him of his, burdened him with his, but turned him into a monster, right? He's not who he should be. But Barbara reveals that he was literally born a monster. The sequence she described actually was shown in the comic. And we'll talk, I guess I was going to say it a little bit later. Usually the rule in visual mediums is to show, not tell. But I think, and they could have easily done all this in flashbacks, although it would have been mighty expensive. But I think they not only saved a couple of bucks by having Homelander and Barbara just describe it, but I think with Homelander, I think the focus needs to be on what it did to him. Why that he's the way he is now because of this stuff. And so I think it worked. Also, thanks to Anthony Starr's incredible acting. But yeah, so He was literally born a monster, lasering his way out of the poor homeless teenager they'd paid to carry the baby, killing a doctor and several nurses. He was very dangerous, and everyone who worked in the lab was not just afraid of the Vought the company, but of him as well. And one of the reasons they didn't try and help him was because they were afraid he would kill him. I mean, they keep just saying it was our job, which, is an excuse that throughout history we've pointed out is not a good one. But a good excuse is they were afraid that he was going to laser them and kill them, as he's doing so, like right now to them, So I think it turns out, and this is also very complex and interesting, that everyone down in that lab, absolutely everyone, was not just an aggressor, but also a victim, including Homelander. No one was innocent, and yet, everybody was both the aggressor and the aggressee. It's really, and Vought is the real villain there, because they were the one that orchestrated it all and put all those individuals in that situation, right? And of course, because it's a faceless organization, there's no one really to take culpability for it. That's also really interesting about when you think about company ills, right? Like, where does the buck stop? Who is truly responsible? All right, so Barbara also reveals, this is the big one, because I was wondering, did he achieve what he needed to by going there? And I think he did, based on this reveal. So she reveals that Homelander was programmed to need love and approval, because Vought knew that they couldn't control him physically, only emotionally, which is why, even though he was tortured there, as he's just got finished describing, he never escaped, even though, as Barbara points out, he could have at any moment. That's how strongly he was conditioned. And I think this is why Homelander doesn't just destroy all of humanity and rule a scorched earth, because he wants the love and approval. He no longer wants it from Vought. He's moved past that, but now he wants it from the masses, right? Could he move past that? But then who would he want love and approval from? He always needs it from someone, which is why I guess so maybe because he doesn't need Vought, maybe he decided he'll show Vought by eclipsing them. Well, first he took over Vought, et cetera, et cetera. But bottom line, Homelander doesn't just want to win. That's not enough for him. He would feel hollow, incomplete. He wants to be cheered on as he does, and he wants it to be written in the history books. He wants to be loved and adored, which often fuels a lot of psychopaths and rulers. All right. That's why I think that gives a new dynamic to the ending of season 3, right? Like, at first it just seemed like he was his true self and he got away with it. But now we know he was getting what he was programmed to want, love and approval, more than he'd ever gotten before, and even better, by being himself. I mean, so now that's why Homelander is pushing for his end game, which is to rule the world, just to totally rule it and be loved and adored. So I just think that's an amazing commentary, that the most powerful person on earth, Sage is the smartest, but he's the most powerful. He only truly feels powerful if the people of Earth approve of him, which in some ways gives them the true power. Although, unfortunately it's a group thing, so he can get rid of a couple of them and still feel he's got a shot. All right, so if they could all band together and say, "We do not like you, Homelander," maybe then they'd have him on the run. And Homelander learns that he can't get rid of his humanity. It's planted in there too deeply by Vought. But then he comes to a very disturbing, scary conclusion, that while he might not be able to improve himself, he can maybe improve his son and make sure that his son does not have the same sense of humanity, because his son is still in the same formative stage that John was back when he was in that lab. We see who was there until he was 16, and that's when he decided to become the Homelander, finding a way to deal with his pain, hiding behind his costume, which would become a mask. You see that early concept artwork for his costume? They stayed pretty close to it. And when Marty first calls him John when he arrives, you can see that it hurts Homelander, because Homelander's like, it reminds him of the regular life that he feels he was robbed of. But when Marty does it again later on in the scene, it makes Homelander angry, because that sadness is turned into anger, and he's not going to let these people hurt him anymore. And I think that's what's so interesting about this scene also, the way it's structured, and also makes it relatable in some ways, despite the horrific things that Homelander is doing, because he's also playing someone who's going home again after a very long time, back to a place. There were a place and people who traumatized him, damaged him, and made him the way that he is today. I wouldn't have eaten that cake, by the way. I just would have pushed it around on my plate with my fork, right? I mean, he wasn't paying too close attention to who was actually eating the cake. I can't believe, these are product placements. And I wonder if Carvel knows how their product is being used. Again, just like when you sign on to be in The Boys, you know what's going, you know what kind of show you're signing on for. And just when you agree to advertise on The Boys, I gotta say, it did make me want Carvel. So it was effective. I just wouldn't eat that Carvel cake. All right. So, but yes, he comes home, he brings a housewarming gift. He looks around like, it looks so much smaller, but yet still the same. I mean, it has that really cool dynamic of that scene would be for so many regular characters and people in real life, but it just puts a superhero twist on it. I think that's excellent, excellent writing. And what adds even yet another layer is that while Homelander views this as his family, as his home, to them it was just a job. Like, this guy comes in because it was the only place he knew, and he's like, I'm home. And they're all like, this is just our 9 to 5, man. Why is the lab still there, by the way? They didn't seem to be working on anything new. Why did they still have that facility? Why hadn't they been moved somewhere else? Although I thought it was funny that they turned the bad room into a storage room. Because again, that's so often what happens to kids' rooms when they move out and they go away to college and so on. They come home and they find that their room is being used, for storage. I mean, they could have been a little more overt and turned it into but I guess that place wouldn't have a sewing room or a gym or something like that. But I thought that was, again, very nice. Why was Barbara allowed to live? That was interesting to me. So I thought about it. Here's my theory. So maybe it's Homelander's mommy complex. Maybe she's the mommy where it all started. Right? Maybe it's also because she's a loyal Vought employee. If you look, well, you have to freeze frame it, but when you do these breakdowns like myself, you will look and freeze frame and make sure you're catching every Easter egg. And one of the memos on the board is one from Barbara talking about the importance of secrecy and honoring your NDA. So I guess he knows that Barbara is a real company woman, so that he can leave her alive and she won't talk, tarnishing the image that he needs to maintain to get that approval that, Vought made sure he so desperately needed in order to control him. But I think deep down, it's really the mommy issue, right? Now, speaking of moms, let's talk Hughie. I do not trust his mom at all. I have even further reason not to trust her, but here's the reasons from this episode that I do not. First off, I think that as a mother, it's weird that she won't wait to take Hughie's father off life support until Hughie is emotionally okay with it. Like, she's like, sorry, it's happening, whether you like it or not. I mean, I know hospitals are expensive, but, she's acting like they're paying by the minute there. Like, I just give Hughie a day or two to, like, just work his way through it so he can come to terms with it. And she's not even trying to help him do that. And then, by the way, we'll talk about the Compound V in a moment, but she goes into Hughie's pockets. What made her even think to do that? When he left the room, no less. She finds the Compound V, knows what it is, knows how to administer it. I mean, we know she works for Vought, like in their New Age health thing, or maybe she works somewhere else. But she's able to administer the Compound V and give it to Hughie's dad, her ex, without ever talking to Hughie about it. And then she's like, oh, I thought that's what you wanted. I'm telling you, there's something off here. But Hughie is not handling his father's situation well. That is for sure. Because he's handling it all by himself. Not only is his mother not helping him, but his other support system, the one that he's had for a while now, Butcher and Starlight, they are both very distracted. And so on his own, he comes up, I thought that Kamiko, her bedside manner needs some work. She's a very abrupt person. But she was trying her best. And I thought that was it is a difficult conversation. It's not going to be, this situation is going to be resolved in like one back or forth. Although Butcher kind of did. Butcher, I guess, always just knows what to say. And he and Hughie have a very good relationship. But anyway, the idea that Hughie comes up with is that he's going to give his dad some Compound V. And he asks A-Train to get it for him. I'm loving that train sound whenever A-Train arrives. I'm like, oh, can you leave and come back again? Because it's just so much fun. And Hughie says, you owe me a loved one for a loved one, since A-Train killed his girlfriend. And it turns out, A-Train's like, are you crazy? The only Compound V that's left is stored in Homelander's headquarters, his personal quarters in Vought. But A-Train still agrees to do it, even though it's so dangerous, because I think he needs, I guess A-Train we're talking about forgiveness, and A-Train so desperately needs it, he's willing to take this huge risk. But I wonder if A-Train will get to the point where he realizes that he also just needs to forgive himself. I think this will help. This is an incredible ask, and it's incredible that A-Train agreed to do it. It made me feel like, that was very cool, you A-Train. So he does it. And he not only gets the Compound V, but he gets an unlikely forced ally in Ashley, who has also broken into Homelander's headquarters to leave a floater in the bathroom. There's got to be more to that, don't you think? I mean, that's all, really? Although she is pretty weird. But they agree to keep each other's secret, not to tell on each other. But have they found it an ally or a liability in each other? We'll see how this develops. A-Train gets his forgiveness. Does it make him feel better? I think it helps a little. I think it at least keeps him on this path, right? It's encouragement that he is doing the right thing. And Hughie gets Compound V. And he frees himself of the hate that he was dealing with. But he gets Compound V. But Butcher's, he finally shows up for Hughie, literally waiting in the shadows, and he says, "Don't you do it, mate." And he is able to convince Hughie not to do it, which is why Hughie's mom steps up. But before he convinces Hughie says, why don't you use it too? I could save my dad and I could save you. But Butcher reveals that he has tried Compound V already. Not Temp V, but straight Compound V. Because Frenchie apparently, if only, I guess Hughie's like, I didn't have to ask A-Train. Although maybe Butcher used the last of it. But apparently Frenchie still had some, and Butcher tried it. But it only made him worse. Now, this information is given very quickly, but it's important because I want to point out to you that not only is Compound V very dangerous and unstable for adults overall, but it's not good for adults in particular if they're in bad health. There are some that's another reason that it's not a good idea to give it to Hughie's dad, which is why Butcher is, also, dealing with Vaught's, chemicals is never a good idea. But Compound V, look what happened to Newman's daughter. You don't always get the results that you hope for. But it's very dangerous to adults, which is why they give it to usually kids and babies. But it's also bad for people who are not in good health. And Butcher, in addition to being an adult and being in bad health, he also already has Temp V in his body. So he's already like a crazy petri dish going on there. And now he's added Compound V to the mix. Maybe this explains why he's got something swimming around inside of him. That's weird. We see that in the shower earlier in the episode. Butcher, he doesn't have much time left. Will his team forgive him? I don't think he cares. He is laser focused on doing right by Becca, which means doing right by Ryan, so that he can forgive himself for what happened to Becca. He even asks MM to finish the job. That's how dire things are. He needs a backup plan, and that backup plan, in his opinion, is MM. Because if he dies before he can get Ryan away from Homelander, he needs MM to do it and raise him right. MM is so flattered he doesn't know what to say. It is incredibly flattering, particularly for someone like Butcher, who doesn't let anyone help him at all. He's always a flying solo kind of guy. So that's incredible. And I think, by the way, Butcher made the right choice. I think MM would be a wonderful influence on Ryan, although he doesn't have any superpower, so it would be hard to handle Ryan, and it is a really big ask. But before MM can answer, they get interrupted, so we don't know quite for sure if MM would do it. But even on his deathbed, Butcher is still an incredible player in this game. Such respect for Butcher. What a great character. No wonder even Homelander respects him. That's how cool Butcher is. He knows there's got to be a reason that Firecracker is going after Starlight specifically. She won't admit it. She's like, no. But I'm like, he's right. He got you. He's right. He sees it. Sage and Butcher, I'm going to say it a little bit later, but I'll just say it here. Sage and Butcher are very, very similar in that, in that they're very savvy. And that they so often can see what's actually going on. Even in episode 2 at TruthCon, Sage was asking Firecracker, and she says, "Are you for real, or is this just a personal vendetta, like wrapped up in all this political crap?" And Sage was right. That's exactly what it is. So I think that's so cool. But and then also back to Butcher, even though he ends up not being able to blackmail Firecracker because she just releases the information herself. We'll talk about that. But he's still, again, this guy he's always thinking, he's always operating, and he gets her keys to her trailer, and he has Frenchie go and look through it. And he finds a drug. Frenchie finds a drug that Firecracker is taking, and I looked it up. And one of the things that it does is it induces lactation. Let's see how that plays out. So what happens though later in that dressing room this episode? Butcher blacks out. So who saves him, right? So viciously. We'll have to wait to find out. But wow, that is quite the question. Even Butcher is shocked and stumped. It takes a lot to shock Butcher, but that was pretty shocking. Speaking of viciousness, Starlight and Firecracker, they continue to have their PR war. Whew, it's brutal. But it's Sage who's really behind it, using social media and the news the way real-life organizations, let's say, do to manipulate the public, as I said, in real life. She's, as I said, also, she has a Butcher similarity. They both know the game. They understand the players. They know how to push their buttons and manipulate them, and they're always able to adjust. I mean, Sage is a great character. And in some ways, maybe she would be a good foil for Butcher as well. Or maybe a good friend. We'll see how things go along. But she's not just the smartest person in the world, but she's also very savvy. She's smart in many ways, which I think is also a good take on the character. It's not just book smarts. All right, the reveal that Starlight got an abortion, right? That doesn't just succeed in taking Starlight down in the public eye, but it also gets Firecracker beat up on live television, just the way Sage planned it. Sage is not a Firecracker fan. She's just using her. Like Homelander and Firecracker, drink the Kool-Aid, but Sage is aware that it's Kool-Aid. All right, but yes, you guessed it. Sage loves a good lobotomy to give her a break from being so smart. You guys even guessed that. You even guessed that that's why she wanted it. And that's the only time that she's attracted to the Deep, when she's in dumb mode. But this kink is weird even for the Deep, and he dates an octopus. However, not only is this a good kinky, crazy moment for the boys, but there's a very important bit of information that's given here as well. How Sage is and is not vulnerable. Her brain is invulnerable. If you injure it, it just eventually grows back. She's dumb for a little while, but she'll come back. So she can't be killed with a headshot or any kind of head injury. So that's very important information that's given there. All right, so Starlight and Firecracker continue to be different sides of the same coin, which is really actually, again, very strong writing. Only Starlight, once again, Starlight makes so many mistakes. She refuses to work with Butcher. She has her own Sage in some ways. But she won't take the help. But Sage is feeding Firecracker top-notch information. I just realized she's got Cracker in the name. All right. During her Starlight's first save, just like Ryan's went horribly wrong, Starlight ended up permanently blinding one of the hostages. Sometimes we saw from Ryan's save, some people are clearly in on the fake save, some people aren't. And this woman, this mother, got blinded in the save. Now, clearly it's Vaught's fault for putting an underage, undertrained super in the field. But Starlight obviously has felt guilty about it ever since. But it doesn't help that her own staff is like, whoa, what did you do? I mean, come on, guys, try and be a little supportive. I don't know why they didn't instantly understand that that was not Starlight's fault. And also you might be like, well, you could have said something, Starlight. Think about what Vought was like back then. And she's been saying stuff now. It helps you understand her a little better and maybe why she was so quick to turn on Vought. Why she is the first to defect. But her staff really turned on her. All right, so the dirt on Firecracker, as I said, comes from Butcher, but she's the one who puts it out there. She reveals it herself because she knows her audience. She knows that the sin itself doesn't really matter because they're in a PR war. And what really matters to the people who are deciding the results, the general public's deciding a lot of stuff here, which I guess at the end of the day is what it's like in real life, is that what they're really concerned about is what is everyone fighting for, right? So because Firecracker wants what they want, they're willing to forgive her. So getting Starlight's medical records, by the way, which are of course supposed to be private, and I think that's what this interaction really underscores the most, that this is a very private and personal decision that really isn't anybody else's business. But they get the medical record. Getting the medical records reminds me of how people tried to access Kate Middleton's when people are wondering what was going on with her. This stuff happens in real life, this crazy stuff. Now, we find out that Hughie knew about the abortion. When I watched this episode for the first time, I wondered if, how would Hughie react to this news? But it wasn't news to him. He was right there with her the whole time, and he had supported her in her decision. But I did think that it was very interesting that they didn't give her an easier reason, right, for why she felt for why she did what she did. Like I thought that maybe the reason would be that her baby would have superpowers and she was worried about that. Or she was worried about the effects of compound V on a baby, you know, that was, you know, conceived, you know, that wasn't given to the baby after they'd been born. Like there were a lot of ways they could have gone with it, but you know, this writing team stepped up and they wanted it to reflect the decision that so many women make. And one of the reasons that sometimes women choose to do this is because they feel they're not ready. And that's the reason that Starlight chose. And so it is in a gray zone. And that's why it is a private decision that's up to the individuals who are directly involved with it. So very complex, sophisticated discussion, right? I mean, they put it in a murky area for you to decide how you feel about it. So yes, Starlight loses the PR war, which she had been winning. I mean, she wasn't like dominating, but she had the edge. And it's such a devastating loss that not only is she taken down, but because she just started supporting the new president-elect's anti-superhero bill, that bill is now dead as well. So that would have actually done the true damage to Vought. Very much like the Cold War, just like real life, it's the law that can actually finally get things done. But it's so hard to do. And Starlight, you know, that was a huge win for Sage. She not only took out Starlight, but she also killed that bill. So I gotta tell you, Sage is, if you don't want to know who's dominating, it's Sage. All right, so that's episode 4 of The Boys, season 4. You know, I just said this show was really willing to dive into some very difficult topics. And, you know, it does seem to be, they do seem to be paying the price a little bit about it in the ratings, or at least the court of public opinion. We'll see what happens when we get the Nielsen charts. But, you know, I guess, what kind of show is this? What kind of show do you think The Boys is? Is it a superhero commentary or is it a commentary on the real world? It's always kind of been a bit of both, but which way do you think it should be leaning more, right? And I think that it's leaning more on real life commentary. You know, maybe it's not as balanced as it was before. So very interesting. Very, very interesting. All right. So what do you think? What did you find the most shocking? Share your thoughts down below. Subscribe today. And of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.